Hello. What's one step that a lot of parents, a lot of children, as they grow to adulthood, may be missing toward getting the transition to adulthood and then to marriage right? What's a step that's often a key to forming a good marriage, long term, workable relationships with others, lifelong friendships? It's a mostly gentle way. There may be some conflict along the way, but it may help to break patterns where young men and women come to past high school, to graduate, to go to college. They may have a lack of life skills, lack of meaning, lack of purpose, laziness. Maybe they've been coddled at home. And yeah, I remember even as I was coming to adulthood in the 1970s, there were a number of those I knew from, they were good Christian homes, but they had been coddled. And they never really learned much about how to live with others. So as we go into this, I'll be giving more and more, excuse me, more and more videos like this. So please click like and subscribe. I'd appreciate that. So someone who leaves home, late adolescence, early adulthood, leaving home, just that right there, going out to live in an apartment or a house with others, friends, usually of the same sex. I would recommend not the opposite sex, but how to learn life skills, how to live with others from those ages from the around 18 until the mid 20s, and it can have a real impact on how well prepared that person is for marriage, for love, and to be able to form a family with someone and to be able to even have children and have them grow on to adulthood. So, this right here is the house where I lived in college back in the 1970s, Miami University, the Christian Student Fellowship House. It's still there. It's turned out to be a historic landmark, but it wasn't considered to be so at the time. It was about a block and a half from campus. Very convenient for where I had most of my classes. And it was sponsored by a group associated with the churches called Christian Student Fellowship, and there was a pastor who was on campus who gave us guidance. He was a young man, and if you look at the picture right above the door, that was my window. That was my room for the first year I was there. So that was the crucible for me learning how to live away from home. And we took on a number of others. As a matter of fact, mostly college. I think they were like most of us were college students going to the college there. Um, Even in my senior year, my last semester, we had a college, or a high school senior transfer to the local school with his parents' permission to live with us, to learn how to live with us. He was 18. I believe he was 18. He was of age, but he might have done that anyway. But he lived with us, and we enjoyed him. We had a lot of fun with him. So he and we had anywhere from 6 to 8 guys there. This would have been from the fall of 1976 through the early 1980s, at least, that there were young men attending the college living there. There was another house that developed with young women that was rented from a local rental group where 6 to 8 young women who would attending college and getting together. So this is mostly a Christian channel, so does this have biblical precedent? In a way, let's take a look right here. Genesis 2:24, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Steps there. Man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. They don't have to take place at the same time. Jacob, you'll see in the same book of Genesis, left his father and mother, Rebekah and Isaac, and went to his uncle Laban's. And from there, he married his wives. There were two who were his cousins and two who were household slave status. And they became concubines, which concubines really did have within the biblical framework the status of a full wife in the family. And he built his family there. And Jacob had been, until Genesis 32, 33, and so on, kind of a mama's boy, stayed around the tents. And I think that we don't see enough that that was a strong developmental stage in his own life, to become his own man, to undergo the hardship in building his family and his house. At times he talked about being a shepherd in the fields and enduring the cold and the hardship to build him up. So yeah, I think there is biblical precedent for this. Just simply looking at the verse, the need to leave the father and mother, and then I think become qualified. Don't insert those words in there for me, but I think that being able to leave the father and mother, that separation does have a lot to do with being able afterwards to be able to form a strong and godly marriage, to be able to build together. So often in our culture, our first experience of living apart from our family has been with college, military service, which someone goes to the dorms or so. And often if a person's going into the trades, they may spend some years working and living at home, which that's okay. That's okay. But as I conclude, I've got an alternative to suggest. We do have young men and women turning more to the trades. College doesn't look as, and even the military don't look as enticing, or people don't see them as much as being a path to the type of being able to have the work and family that they used to. But again, leaving the parents to pursue further education, and the goal really should be to support oneself as much as possible along that way. And this could be a real challenge to the parents. They may need to learn themselves to let go at this point. The 18, young adulthood, late adolescence, however you want to classify that stage of the life, to learn to let go. Let that young adult learn responsibility, learn how to work in a household, how to manage money, and so on. They may need actually at some point really to try to do what they can to reduce their support financially as much as possible, and not expect things to carry on with that son or daughter when they're away, just like they did at home. And if you go in the military, your drill sergeant will often tell you that you're not living in your mama's house anymore. And that's part of what they do to try to bring you to be that type of adult. And that's why the military often in years past has been a part of making this transition, leaving the father and mother to be able to support a wife and family, not just financially, but with maturity. Maturity to be able to live with another person, not expect your own way every time, and definitely not to resort to insults and maybe even violence if you don't get your own way. Ooh. horrible. So for a person in college, um, my experience has been that if a person has lived in dormitories and institutional living a lot, I did over time have some friends that I lived with who grew up on the mission field and they lived most of their time in missionary schools and they would go home to their parents. Or if they have lived in dormitories in college, there seems to be something that's a little bit lacking in being able to take up the responsibility in going full on into a household. Going off campus or sharing a house or apartment does seem to be a step of independence beyond the dormitory, beyond the institution, which many of them really need to know. And I've lived with those in the past, roommates throughout my college and seminary years, that even beyond what the military teaches, there are some adjustments that people need to make. And these are adjustments. These aren't major surgery, but these are gaining life experience and life skills. So, military, the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines, the United States, they do teach specific skills. And they do have very strong expectations for the people who enroll, who enlist. But if a person who's been through one of those, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, so on, they may bring some military expectations to people who haven't been, spouses, others who haven't been through the same expectations and ways of doing things. And I do have some friends that I don't, who had been through the military, who were actually wonderful roommates because they did have an understanding that they couldn't, that we weren't living in the military and they couldn't pull rank, they're not in charge, that they couldn't demand that everything be done in the way that they were when they were in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, or Coast Guard, but that those were real life skills that they did bring into there, and they needed to adjust, to transpose, to work to make those apply where they were. So all sorts of life skills to learn from this. How to share bills, how to take that bill which comes every month, divide it up and pay it. Put together a household account to do that. How to do improvement of whatever situation you are. If you live in a house, you might be able to get by with some home improvement there, learning how to divide up the labor to support the household fairly, what fair division of labor really is. It isn't just cooking and cleaning, it includes a lot of other maintenance too. If you're in an apartment, you probably don't have to do that. But if you're in a house, you may have to do that more. And it also means learning how to account as gracefully as possible those who may not be pulling their weight or may be taking advantage of others. You start gracefully first. You don't want to come down on them uh, like they've just done the worst thing possible ever, but you may need to work with them if they're not pulling their weight, if they're taking advantage of others, or if they need to learn additional skills. There can be a lot of sharing and learning of skills, especially with things if you're having meals together. During the house where I lived there, we always had during the week, Monday through Friday, one meal together, the supper meal, and we provided for the other meals. We learned meal prep, how how to cook, how to clean, and how to keep our house clean. And we did some improvement projects on that house too. So teaching and learning from others, having that humility to let others guide you, and maybe working out a way of doing things where you're not trying to tyrannize and terrorize other people, where your opinions and your ways of doing things are different, where you learn how to have agreements and disagreements graciously, and where someone wants to do something their own way and they don't want to listen to you, well, Okay, do it your own way. See how that works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So, sometimes when people come into these situations, they can be pretty defensive and they really need to learn to negotiate because all they know is their own ways of doing things, the way that they were raised, and expectations that come along that can be either skills or baggage. And knowing how to make a contribution to the household, and again, making others really trying to that we pull our own weight here when we're together. And sometimes people try to take advantage of others. There may be others who are willing, considerate, and they try to take advantage of others. If you're a Christian, and other people may try to take advantage of even other Christians if they think that you have a servant attitude, because if you there are people with privilege and entitlement, even who claim to be Christians, who, if you have a servant attitude, you've been looking, they will try to treat you as their slaves. So you need to learn how to deal with those things. And if you're in a group of guys, like the 6 to 8 guys would often correct someone who's trying to take advantage. And living with others in this way can help to sand off a lot of your roughest spots. Living with others like this, they can expose your own patterns of selfishness, stubbornness, rebellion, arrogance, immaturity, laziness, and you learn that you can't be a parasite, take advantage of others, but you need to pull your weight. Things go better then. You learn stuff, you get along with others then, and you grow strongly as a person. And there may be times where others really do need real support when they're going through a hard time. You learn how to talk with people, not throw down all your advice on them, but learn what the situation is. Maybe give advice, perhaps learn how to give advice, criticism graciously. And maybe there'll be others there that you can live together with over time, even with deep disagreements. When I was living there off campus, I don't think there was anyone there who was from the same denominational background as others. We were Christians, but we did have some doctrinal differences. And we could discuss them, but we learned to live even where we disagreed about those things. We learned that, okay, you believe this way, you believe that way, you follow interpretation. Not saying that everyone is right or wrong, but simply we disagree and we can live with that. So, last thing, some of the things I'm saying here would apply, might be possible more to those who are in college, perhaps in the military, but my concern is for those who are coming to high school, out of high school, and learning a trades too. People who are learning to do something like plumbing or like that, and they may eventually, they can live at home, sure, but it may be an opportunity for them to mature also beyond their home if they learn to live apart from their parents as well. So maybe pastors really know about these things, youth group leaders, church bulletin boards could be used to bring people together who are seeking roommates, seeking to be able to do this. So there's a lot that can be done here. I think that we may need to look at this a lot more. And maybe, I think this might be something to consider if you're considering someone that you're going to be marrying. Can they even live with someone of the same sex as them, another guy with another guy, another gal with another gal, effectively? I've married off a lot of roommates, and I think most of them are in happy marriages right now. Some of them did have some difficulty, honestly. There, I only know of one divorce there, and that didn't happen until about 30 years into the marriage, and I don't know that it was I think that I'm not going to give my opinions anymore. Not my place to judge where they were. But I'll leave this off for you to consider. And maybe you're a parent, and maybe you need to consider these things. In years past, parents of very well-to-do families, rich families in the East, would send their children, particularly if they're showing the signs of the selfishness, stubbornness, rebellion, arrogance, immaturity, laziness, and so on. They would send them off to some sort of a job, like Richard Henry Dana, the book which I recommend, 2 Years Before the Mast, deals with his time in a sailing ship in the 1800s. There are people I know of who encountered young sons of the Texas oil billionaire family, the Hunts, out doing the labor, starting from the bottom up to learn the business in that way. And there are many friends I know who when we graduated high school, I went to college, but they also went into other different jobs, and they would sometimes be in a job where they'd go out, be working, come back to a motel, and just have enough time to read the Bible, brief prayer, and go snooze off. So, but it did mean that they were learned how to live apart from their family and learn to be responsible, learn to take care of things. So this may be something, if we're talking about being a coddling generation, I don't know how deep that is, how widespread that is across the United States or Europe or the Western world or even the worldwide, but maybe we need to consider this as a step toward being a mature person in our world. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I hope this helps.